evening and welcome to Springfield Career Insights. Tonight, we interrogate the nation within, the civic foundations that shape identity before power is claimed. Is youth service a mere rite of passage or the sovereign forge of civic resilience? We explore how National Youth Service and Strategic Studies sculpt identity, clarify institutions, and prepare a continent to withstand the fractures of history. In this episode, we ask, should civic foundations be treated as optional or as the sovereign prerequisite for continental survival? What happens when nations neglect the training of their youth in dignity and clarity? We are joined by His Excellency Dr. Godfrey Gandawa, President of Springfield Research University, Architect of Education 6.0, and Continental Legal Advisor. His work reframes youth service not as indoctrination, but as sovereign preparation for civic responsibility. Welcome, President. We are honored to host you.
Thank you, Dr. Advocate. Congratulations for attaining your PhD.
Thank you.
So at Springfield, we believe that youth service must be sovereign, anchored in civic dignity, calibrated in strategic clarity, and accountable to continental resilience.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, what is the sovereign purpose of National Youth Service within Springfield civic architecture?
So, thank you, Doc. The National Youth Service is not a program. It is a rite of passage, a furnace where Springfield tempers raw youth into civic steel. It is the first drumbeat of responsibility, summoning young citizens to step beyond the classroom and into the living theater of nationhood. So here, service is not charity. It is the sovereign rehearsal of leadership, the apprenticeship of dignity. It is the bridge between knowledge and duty, where the algebra of the classroom meets the sweat of the community, where the grammar of English becomes the grammar of citizenship. In this crucible, Springfield's Education 6.0 reforms are not ink on paper, but muscle and memory in the lives of its youth. So it is the shield of sovereignty, training young men and women to resist dependence, to see themselves not as subjects of circumstance, but as custodians of nations' destinies. Each act of service is a declaration that our nation will not outsource its future. It is the continental beacon modeling for Africa that liberation without guns is possible, that civic duty can be new march of freedom. So every nation's youth, through service, become ambassadors of emotional intelligence and guardians of sovereign pride.
Thank you, Professor. Does youth service cultivate patriotism, and how essential is it to national identity?
Thank you, Doc. So, does youth service cultivate patriotism, and how essential is it to national identity? You see, so youth service is not a mere program of chores. It is a forge of belonging, the sovereign classroom where patriotism is not taught as theory, but lived as practice. It cultivates patriotism by binding the individual to the collective. We remove the individualism and inculcate the collectiveness. When a young citizen plants a tree, they are not just greening the soil. They are rooting themselves in a country's destiny. When they serve in classrooms, clinics, or civic projects, they are rehearsing the anthem of responsibility, learning that love of country is expressed in sweat, discipline, and shared sacrifice. It is essential to national identity because identity is not inherited, it is enacted. Without youth service, patriotism risks becoming rhetoric, a flag waved without substance. That's what we see. With the youth service, patriotism becomes embodied, a flag carried by hands that have built, healed, and defended community. Youth service is the sovereign rehearsal of nationhood. It ensures that a country's identity is not a museum artifact, but a living covenant between generations. It transforms patriotism from sentiment into structure, from emotion into architecture.
Thank you, Professor. What are the dangers of skipping civic formation in favor of technical acceleration?
So thank you, Advocate. So the danger is profound. When societies rush into technical acceleration without grounding their citizens in civic formation, they build speed without direction, innovation without conscience. So technology advances, but it is wielded without civic responsibility. Tools designed to liberate can be turned into instruments of surveillance, manipulation, or repression. Efficiency without equity. You see? So systems become faster, but they do not become fair. Technical acceleration without civic literacy widens inequality, creating elites who control knowledge while the majority remains voiceless. You see? Progress without participation. Citizens are treated as consumers of technology rather than co-authors of governance. So democracy sinks as algorithms expand, leaving people governed by systems they do not understand. Acceleration without anchors. So nations risk losing their moral compass. Civic formation is the anchor that ensures speed does not become chaos and innovation does not become exploitation. So the sovereign warning is this: skipping civic formation in favor of technical acceleration creates societies that are advanced in tools but impoverished in values. And a nation that accelerates without conscience is a nation racing towards captivity.
Thank you, Professor. Can you speak of the role of youth service in healing fractured national identities?
So thank you, Advocate. So youth service is not simply voluntarism. People mistake it as voluntarism. It is the sovereign act of binding a nation's wounds through shared responsibility. When young people step into service, they do more than fill gaps in institutions. What do? They stitch together fractured identities. So youth service creates common ground. In societies divided by ethnicity, class, or history, service projects place young citizens side by side, working not as rivals but as partners. The act of building schools, cleaning communities, or mentoring peers becomes a rehearsal for national unity. So it nurtures civic literacy. Service teaches that citizenship is not passive, it is active, participatory, and dignified. So young people learn that their voice matters, their labor heals, their presence transforms. It restores trust in institutions. When youth see themselves as agents of change, they begin to believe that governance is not distance, it is responsive. Service becomes a bridge between citizens and the state, reminding both that dignity is a shared project. And most importantly, youth service redefines identity. Instead of being trapped in fractured labels, young people begin to see themselves as custodians of common destiny. Service transforms I into we, and fractured nations into sovereign communities. So, the Sovereign Council is this. Youth service is not charity, it is nation building. It heals fractures by teaching young citizens that unity is not inherited, it is constructed. And every act of service is a brick in the architecture of national identity.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to a song called Guardians of the Soil.
Springfield forged the sovereign heart. We are the quiet strain. Peace is our mission, breadth and length. Africa's keeper, the proud and true. The battlefield, no northern heart. We are the old, the quiet strain. Peace is our mission.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. What reforms have you championed to ensure youth service is dignified, strategic, and transformative?
Thank you, Doc. So, the reforms I have advanced are designed to kind of elevate youth service from tokenism to sovereignty. So, duty as foundation. I have insisted that youth service must never be exploitation disguised as patriotism. Policies were crafted to guarantee their stipends, recognition, and protection of rights so that service is not captivity, but contribution. strategic alignment. Service programs were recalibrated to align with national priorities: education, health, environmental stewardship, and civic literacy. Youth are not sent to fill gaps randomly. They are deployed where their energy builds the nation's future. Transformative design. I champion reforms that embed mentorship and civic education into service. Young people are not only serving, they are learning governance, emotional intelligence, and national responsibility. So, service becomes a classroom as much as duty. Talk of institutional permanency. So, youth service was positioned as a pillar of Springfield civic architecture, not as temporary project. So, by embedding it in law policy, we ensured continuity across generations. Then, continental vision. Beyond Springfield, I have argued for youth service as a model for Africa, where fractured identities can be healed and civic responsibility can be woven into the fabric of nationhood. So the sovereign counsel is this: youth service must be identified in its treatment, strategic in its deployment, and transformative in its outcomes. Anything less is charity. True reform makes it nation building.
Thank you, Professor. Why must every Springfield graduate be fluent in strategic studies, not only their technical field?
Thank you, Advocate. So the answer lies in sovereignty. Technical mastery without strategic literacy produces skilled workers, but not nation builders. They are skilled, yes, but do they build nations? No. So Springfield insists that every graduate must be fluent in strategic studies because technical skill without context is fragile. A brilliant engineer who cannot read the civic landscape may design systems that serve power rather than people. Strategic studies anchor technical expertise in national responsibility. Strategy transforms knowledge into leadership. So graduates must not only know how to build, but why to build, for whom to build, and under what civic safeguards. So strategic literacy ensures that innovation is guided by conscience. National resilience requires foresight. So technical acceleration alone can be hijacked by repressive agendas. So strategic studies train graduates to anticipate threats, diagnose civic fractures, and defend liberty against manipulation. Then talk of continental vision. So we are saying continental vision demands integration. So Springfield graduates are not just professionals, they are custodians of Africa's future. So strategic studies equip them to see beyond their discipline, to connect science with sovereignty, and to transform expertise into continental leadership. So the sovereign counsel is this: Springfield graduates must be fluent in both the language of their craft and the language of strategy. Because a nation is not built by technicians alone. It is built by citizens who can think, plan, and defend with dignity.
Thank you, Professor. How do strategic studies protect against civic amnesia and institutional drift?
Thank you, Advocate. So, strategic studies are the memory and compass of a nation. Civic amnesia occurs when societies forget the sacrifices, principles, and constitutional anchors that gave them liberty. Institutions drift happen when governance loses direction, sliding into convenience or manipulation. So strategic studies guard against both. They serve as archival conscience, reminding leaders and citizens of the struggles that birthed freedom, and diagonizing when current practices betray those foundations. So, without this memory, nations repeat mistakes, mistaking captivity for progress. They act as diagnostic instruments, constantly measuring whether institutions are aligned with their original mandate. Strategic literacy then trains professionals to detect drift easily and early, before small compromise becomes systemic collapse. They provide foresight frameworks, teaching citizens and leaders to anticipate threats, whether political, economic, or cultural. So strategic studies ensure that acceleration does not blind us, and that reforms are anchored in long-term vision rather than short-term gains. And they cultivate sovereign vigilance, embedding the habit of questioning power, scrutinizing policy, and defending civic dignity, not just clapping hands. This vigilance prevents institutions from sliding into silence, suspicion, or manipulation. So, the Sovereign Council is this: strategic studies are the antidote to forgetting and the safeguard against drifting. They keep nations awake to their past, alert to their present, and prepared for the future.
Thank you, Professor. How do you balance historical rigor with visionary imagination in Springfield's curriculum?
Thank you, Edward. So, the balance is deliberate and sovereign. Historical rigor ensures that our graduates never suffer civic amnesia. Visionary imagination ensures they never become prisoners of the past. We insist on anchoring every discipline in history. Students must know the struggles, sacrifices, and constitutional battles that shaped our nation. This rigor prevents distortion, reminding them that liberty was earned, not gifted. At the same time, we cultivate imagination as projection, training students to envision futures beyond captivity. They are taught to dramatize possibilities, to script reforms, and to design institutions that embody dignity. The curriculum is therefore dual-layered. History provides the spine, imagination provides the wings. So without rigor, imagination drifts into fantasy. Without imagination, rigor hardens into nostalgia. Together, they create graduates who can diagnose the past and design the future. So the Sovereign Council is this: Springfield's curriculum is not a museum of memory, nor a theater of dreams. It is a living architecture where history anchors and imagination propels. That is how nations are preserved and reborn.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to a song called Guidance of the Soil.
From war-torn skies to silent streets, we rise where struggle and ingenuity meet. Not for conquest, not for fame. Africa's keepers, proud and true. The battlefield knows what we do. We are the shield, we are the vow, holding peace through fire and plow. Lead with justice, act with grace, guarding every sacred place. We are the shield, we are the vow, holding peace through fire and plow. Lead with justice, act with grace, guarding every sacred place.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. How does youth service shape professional ethics and institutional loyalty?
Thank you, Advocate. So, youth service is the crucible where professional ethics and institutional loyalty are forged. So, it is not simply an apprenticeship, it is a rehearsal for sovereign responsibility. So, youth service instills discipline of conduct. When young citizens serve communities, they learn that professionalism is not measured only by skill, but by integrity. They discover that cutting corners or exploiting others erodes trust, while diligence and fairness elevate both self and institution. It cultivates respect for hierarchy and process. So, service teaches that institutions are not arbitrary, they are structured vessels of dignity. By working within protocols, youth learn that loyalty is not blind obedience, but respect for order that protects everyone. It embeds empathy as ethic. So, serving vulnerable communities reminds young professionals that ethics are not abstract. They are lived in how one treats the weakest. This empathy becomes the moral compass of their careers. Now, it nurtures loyalty through contribution. So, when youth see their service transforming schools, clinics, or civic spaces, they begin to feel ownership of institutions. Loyalty is born not from slogans, but from the lived experience of building something worth defending. So, the Sovereign Council is this: youth service shapes ethics by teaching integrity, and it shapes loyalty by teaching ownership. So it ensures that Springfield graduates are not only skilled professionals, but custodians of institutions who serve with conscience and pride.
Thank you, Professor. How do you ensure that youth service is not symbolic, but skill building and strategic?
Thank you, Advocate. So, symbolism without substance is betrayal. Youth service must never be reduced to uniforms, slogans, or ceremonial gestures. It must be designed as a sovereign engine of skill and strategy. I see it in these other funny countries. It's uniforms and slogans. We ensure this by embedding competency pathways. So every youth service assignment is tied to tangible skills, whether in teaching, health, environmental stewardship, or civic administration. So service becomes a classroom where practice builds capacity. We insist on strategic deployment. So youth are not scattered randomly. They are placed where their energy intersects with national priorities. This ensures that service is not busy work, but nation building. We integrate mentorship and reflection. So each service program pairs youth with seasoned professionals who guide, correct, and inspire. Reflection sessions transform experience into wisdom, ensuring that service is not just activity, but learning. We codify evaluation and recognition. So service outcomes are measured, documented, and celebrated. So youth live not only with memories, but with portfolios of competence that strengthen their professional trajectory. And we embed continuity into governance. So service is linked to future opportunities, scholarships, leadership, programs, and institutional pathways, so that the skills acquired become stepping stones, not isolated episodes. So youth service must be more than symbolic. It must be the forge where skills are sharpened, strategies rehearsed, and nations built. Anything less is pageantry. True service is preparation for sovereignty.
Thank you, Professor. What role does mentorship play in guiding youth from service into sovereign careers?
Thank you, Advocate. So mentorship is the bridge between service and sovereignty. So youth service gives young citizens the raw experience of contribution. But mentorship refines that experience into professional destiny. Mentorship provides translation of lessons. So a young person may serve in a clinical classroom, but without guidance, the lessons remain scattered. So mentors help decode those experiences into principles of ethics, leadership, and responsibility. It offers modeling of conduct. So youth learn not only from tasks, but from observing how seasoned professionals carry themselves with dignity, with integrity, with discipline. So mentorship turns service into apprenticeship in sovereign behavior. It ensures continuity of growth. So service is temporary. Mentorship extends beyond it. So guiding youth into careers where their skills are sharpened and their civic responsibilities deepened. It cultivates visionary imagination. So mentors help youth see beyond the immediate duty, inspiring them to design futures where their careers are not just jobs, but instruments of nation building. So mentorship is the compass that ensures youth service does not end as memory, but matures into sovereign careers. So without mentorship, service risks being symbolic, and with mentorship, it becomes the seed of national leadership.
Thank you, Professor. How do you measure the long-term impact of strategic studies on national development?
Thank you, Advocate. So the measure of strategic studies is not immediate applause. It is the sovereign trajectory of a nation across generations. So to assess their impact, we look for signs that go beyond classrooms and into the bloodstream of governance. So we observe policy coherence. Whether graduates trained in strategy are able to craft laws and reforms that align with constitutional anchors rather than drift into convenience. So strategic literacy must translate into disciplined governance. Then we track institutional resilience. So whether institutions withstand manipulation, coups, or populist shortcuts, nations with strategic graduates do not collapse easily. they recalibrate with foresight. And we measure civic vigilance, whether citizens trained in strategic thought resist amnesia and defend their liberties. So a population fluent in strategy does not surrender its sovereignty to propaganda. You see? We evaluate continental contribution. So whether Springfield's graduates export their strategic literacy into regional bodies, shaping Africa's destiny with foresight rather than reaction. And finally, we look at generational continuity. That's where the strategic studies produce leaders who mentor successors, ensuring that vigilance and vision are inherited, not lost. The long-term impact of strategic studies is measured not in grades, you see, but in governance. It is seen in the nations that remember their past and defend their present and design their future with dignity.
Wow, this is amazing. Let's take a commercial break and stay tuned.
At Springfield Research University, we don't teach to pass exams, we encode futures. Grounded in Education 6.0 and powered by STEMA, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine and automation, we deliver modular, sovereign learning across undergraduate, master's and doctoral programs. Explore our prospectus, where every curriculum is designed to STEMatize every discipline, dignify local authorship, and credential transformative knowledge. Be STEMatized, be sovereign. Here, knowledge is authored, not borrowed. Curriculum is credentialed, not copied. Every graduate becomes an architect of transformation. With 2 annual intakes, March and September, the path to innovation is always open. From the logic of automation to the soul of indigenous intelligence, SRU is where tomorrow is designed. Springfield isn't just a university, it's an epicenter of epistemic dignity. Join the movement. Study where learning governs itself. Springfield Research University, the globe is here. Where are you?
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. What policies should Africa adopt to elevate youth service and strategic studies across the continent?
So thank you, Advocate. So Africa must treat youth service and strategic studies not as optional programs, but as pillars of continental renewal. So policies must be bold, binding, and visionary. So codification of youth service into law. Every nation must legislate youth service as a civic rite of passage, ensuring that participation is dignified, protected, and rewarded. And service must be permanent architecture, not seasonal charity. Most of our African countries, they make it seasonal charity when they have elections and so on. That's when they talk, Then, integration with education systems. So, youth service must be linked to universities, colleges, and vocational training so that service builds skills while reinforcing civic responsibility. So, strategic studies must be embedded across disciplines, ensuring every graduate is fluent in foresight. Then, continental coordination. The African Union must establish frameworks where youth service programs are shared across borders. This creates solidarity, allowing young Africans to heal fractures not only within nations but across the continent. Then, protection of dignity and equity. So, policies must guarantee stipends, recognition, and career pathways so that service is not exploitation but empowerment. Strategic studies must be accessible to all, not reserved for elites. Then we talk mentorship and leadership pipelines. So, youth service must feed into mentorship programs, that guide participants into sovereign careers. So strategic studies must be tied to leadership academies to prepare graduates to defend liberty and design futures. So Africa must legislate youth service and embed strategic studies as continental anchors. Because a continent that elevates its youth into service and strategy will never drift into captivity. It will rise into sovereignty.
Thank you, Professor. How do you respond to critics who dismiss civic formation as outdated or performative?
So thank you, Advocate. So I respond with sovereign clarity. Civic formation is never outdated. It is foundational. Those who dismiss it as performative confuse ritual with responsibility. So civic formation is the immune system of democracy. Without it, nations become vulnerable to manipulation, coups, and populist shortcuts. So technical acceleration without civic literacy produces speed but not sovereignty. It is the anchor of identity. In fractured societies, civic formation reminds citizens who they are, what they fought for, and why liberty must be defended. Outdated? No. Memory is timeless. It is the training ground for responsibility. So civic formation teaches young people that citizenship is not consumption, but contribution. Performative? No. Service and vigilance are lived, not staged. And it is the shield against captivity. Nations that skip civic formation drift into silence, suspicion, and manipulation. Nations that embrace it remain awake, alert, and sovereign. So many African countries are not. Civic formation is not a relic, it is a safeguard. Outdated are the critics who confuse ceremony with substance. Civic formation is the architecture of liberty, and without it, nations collapse into captivity.
Thank you, Professor. Finally, if you could issue one decree to every young citizen entering Springfield's gates, what would it be?
Thank you, Advocate. If I could issue one decree to every young citizen entering Springfield gates, it would be this: serve before you seek to be served. For youth service is not a burden, but a covenant. A covenant that transforms learning into leadership and leadership into legacy. Within these gates, you are called to give your imagination, your discipline, and your courage to the greater good. In return, Springfield will give you the tools to build a continent worthy of your sacrifice. Let your service be the anthem of your youth, so that when you depart these gates, you carry not only knowledge, but the dignity of having served and the tools to save your nation and the continent. To conclude, Advocate, I may hazard a guess and say, critics who confuse civic formation with party indoctrination are there. Party indoctrination breeds militias instead of citizens. Many African countries are using this indoctrination as youth service. That distortion is wrong, yet it perpetuates across the region and continent. Civic formation is not indoctrination, it is emancipation, and it is important. Thank you, Advocate, for having me.
Thank you, President, for reframing youth service not as indoctrination, but as sovereign preparation for civic responsibility. Your insistence on clarity and continental resilience reminds us that nations without foundations are nations without survival. To our audience, If you are ready to embed civic dignity into youth service, recalibrate identity with strategic clarity, and design nations that endure, Springfield Research University awaits you. Visit www.springfieldresearchuniversity.net and join the mission to structure civic foundations with sovereign clarity. That brings us to the end of this diagnostic edition of Springfield Career Insights. May tonight's reflections provoke identity, resilience, and continental renewal. I am Clarence, your host. Good night.
Hey, hey, siyakubuka, tikiti letu Tanzania kiwa. Hey, hey, siyakubuka, sonke siyavumelana, ngemjululo muhle sonke similela. Hey, hey, siyakubuka, tikiti letu Tanzania kiwa. Hey, 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 siyakubuka, sonke siyavumelana, ngemjululo muhle sonke similela.
Greetings of the day, distinguished parents. Today I speak not simply of education, but of destiny itself. The destiny of your children, the destiny of our nation, the destiny of Africa itself. You, parents, are the guardians of tomorrow. You hold in your hands the architects of the future. And Springfield is the place where that future is designed, refined, and defined. We are not here to discuss dusty books or rusty curricula. We are here to ignite vision, to awaken innovation, to raise leaders who will not just inherit tomorrow, but create it. Springfield is not simply a university. Springfield is a covenant with destiny, a promise to every parent that your child will not be swallowed by the rot, but lifted into greatness. So today, let us speak honestly, let us speak boldly, and let us speak as guardians of tomorrow, for Springfield is the place to build futures. Parents, let us ask ourselves honestly, which universities are we sending our children to, and what are they truly teaching? And are they teaching dusty, rusty curricula, outdated, irrelevant, disconnected from the pulse of modern innovation? Or are they teaching campus rot, where beer halls rise beside lecture halls, where discipline is bled with indulgence, where faculty and students alike stumble from the bar into the classroom? And worse, are they teaching moral decay, where daughters are mortgaged at bars, where leaders are lost before they are even born? This is not how we raise leaders. This is not how we raise visionaries. This is not how we raise future generation of innovators. You cannot expect a failing university to mold a future leader when it is failing itself. But Springfield is not just a university. Springfield is a movement that refuses the dust, a movement that rejects the rot, a movement that restores dignity, discipline, and destiny. Springfield is the architect of Education 6.0, modern, innovative, future-proof learning. We do not recycle yesterday's failures. We design tomorrow's victories. Springfield is the custodian of STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine, and automation. LECAMS, Leadership 6.0, Industry 6.0, Knowledge 6.0, Entrepreneurship 6.0, Manufacturing 6.0, and Skills 6.0, and STEM, Stematize, Industrialize, and Modernize. Frameworks that weave together science and technology, emotional intelligence, and civic responsibility. We do not simply teach knowledge, we cultivate wisdom. We do not simply train skills, we shape character. Springfield is the holistic builder of leaders, leaders formed in academics, leaders clothed in dignity, leaders disciplined in conduct, leaders sharpened in vision. At Springfield, we don't just graduate students, we graduate futures. We graduate futures. At Springfield, we are intentional. Intentional in every detail, intentional in every step, intentional in every future we build. We believe that dress matters, conduct matters, self-presentation matters, because how you carry yourself is how you declare yourself to the world. Discipline at Springfield is not restriction. Discipline is empowerment. Discipline is the key that unlocks dignity, the compass that directs vision, the foundation upon which leaders stand. Every student is trained to uphold themselves as leaders, leaders who innovate, leaders who inspire, leaders who become guardians of dignity, guardians of discipline, and ambassadors of vision. We care about how you look, how you walk, how you speak, because we are intentional in building futures. At Springfield, we do not permit careless dressing, passing hair, tinting fads, or scatterbrained presentation. We uphold dignity in appearance, discipline in conduct, and vision in identity, because every detail shapes the leader your child is becoming. Parents, today you are not simply choosing a university. You are choosing the architects of your child's destiny. You are choosing whether your child will be swallowed by the rod or raised into greatness. Springfield is that haven, a place where children are not lost, but found, not exploited, but empowered, not neglected, but nurtured. Here, they are protected. Here, they are cultivated. Here, they are transformed into leaders who carry dignity in their walk, discipline in their conduct, and vision in their eyes. We do not gamble with futures. We guard them. We do not mortgage daughters. We raise visionaries. We do not blare discipline with indulgence. We sharpen it into destiny. Parents, Springfield is not just where your child studies. Springfield is where your child becomes a leader, becomes a visionary, becomes the future. This is not about dusty books. This is about living futures. This is not about beer halls. This is about boardrooms. This is not about mortgaging daughters. This is about raising visionaries. Springfield is the place where futures are built, the place where leaders are born, the place where your child belongs. Choose Springfield and choose destiny. Choose Springfield and you choose greatness. Choose Springfield and you choose the future. Our environment is not in beer halls. It is not in shopping malls. It is not in shop fronts. We are rooted in the knowledge park, the innovation hub, and we are intentional about this. For while others are careless about their surroundings, content to follow the crowd, Springfield stands apart. We are not in the business of imitation. We are in the business of transformation. We are here to build holistic individuals, disciplined, dignified, visionary. Explore our offerings on our website or speak directly with our admissions team. Springfield is where futures are shaped.
Springfield Research University. The globe is here. Where are you?